Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the things we know about Surah Al-Fatihah is that it's actually a supplication, it's a dua. And although when we look at this surah for the first time and we look at these verses, we don't actually see the actual supplication straight away. In fact, the first four verses have nothing to do with us asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anything. It's just praising and glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's only in the fifth ayah when we're basically asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance to the straight path. This is the actual dua. The dua is ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, guidance to the straight path. Everything before is just glorifying and mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names and attributes. And even though this surah is called and has the name dua, ad-dua, the supplication, and it's the greatest surah in the Quran, and it's also a supplication. The supplication ayah is just basically one ayah, guide us to the straight path. The rest of it is just mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his names and glorifying Allah azza wa jal. So why is this the case? Why is it that this surah is known as ad-dua, the supplication, yet the dua portion of the surah is just one ayah, and the other ayah, the next ayah, is just explaining the dua in more detail? Why is it that this surah is called a dua? It's said that one of the things that this surah shows us is actually the etiquettes of an individual making dua and how he should make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what it's actually telling us is that although the beginning of the surah is just praising and glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is one of the etiquettes of making dua, meaning when you supplicate and make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before you actually supplicate and ask Allah azza wa jal for anything, you should be glorifying and praising him. And you have to be in the correct position in order for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to answer your supplication. So you have to be in the correct position in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the correct standing in front of Allah azza wa jal for him to eventually respond and answer your supplication. Just like, for example, if you went to somebody you didn't get along with and you asked them for something, they wouldn't give it to you because you don't get along with them. They don't like you. So you'd have to be in the correct standing with that person. You'd have to be in the best position in front of that individual, saying good things about him, being good to him, in order for him to help you, in order for him to respond to anything that you want from him. Even more so is the case with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not befitting that we make dua to Allah azza wa jal straight away and ask him for wealth and family and good health and paradise and the straight path, the guidance to the straight path, etc., without first of all gaining a nearness to Allah azza wa jal, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by his names and by his attributes, glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what we do in this surah, and it shows us the etiquettes of making dua. So we're glorifying and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the one who is entirely merciful, the especially merciful, Maliki Yawmiddin, owner of the day of judgment. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, you alone we worship, you alone we ask for help. So we're glorifying and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then after we've glorified Allah azza wa jal, after we've praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're in the correct position in front of our Lord. Then we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance to the straight path. This is now when we make dua and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something, now that we're in the correct position to be able to ask him for something. And we ask him for guidance to the straight path. And this is one of the etiquettes of dua, and it's one of the beautiful benefits and things that we can take from this surah, Surah Al-Fatihah, the greatest surah in the Quran.